Where is your wealth sleeping? Is it in a bank account losing value to inflation, or is it in an asset that grows while you sleep? This is a summary of property, why we encourage people to own and purchase property. Because once you own property, you've got an asset that will grow while you sleep. So we'll begin with that basic property 101. That's okay, that's where we should start. What is property? Property is any item that a person or a business has legal title on. My shoes are my property, my watch is my property, my car is my property. But we're talking here about property that is an immovable, that is physical. The property that we own as the municipal council, the property that we own, some of us sitting all here in this room, that is the property which is key and that we are discussing today. What is property? If I ask one of you here, what is property? Quickly, a mere layman will say, it is shelter for me. It is my safe haven for me. It's security for me. They don't see beyond what exactly is property and what is the value that property carries. So for most of us, particularly individuals, property is shelter. When men are thinking of getting married, the first thing that comes to mind, I must have a home for my family, shelter. When we start working, if you're a wise young professional, the first thing that you should think about is I must then buy a home. Well, most of the time we think of cars and good life. But the first thing that you should think of is property. But why do you think of property? Shelter. So in our minds as individuals, we just are looking for shelter. Yet, it is beyond shelter when you acquire property. We also look for it as legacy. That is what we see of property. We will never quite see it as value, wealth, that we can actually help or use to create more and more and more wealth using it during our livelihood. So important for you to note, property is this. It is wealth. I'm not discounting this. We all are people that we're always looking for security. The reason why we wake up in the morning to go to work, even if we don't want to, security. We want to have a livelihood that is secured. But you can secure your livelihood a lot more here, even after your work life. It also outperforms inflation, and it goes back to my introduction. My introduction was, where is your wealth in a bank account losing value to inflation? Because we all appreciate that cash can lose value. It does with inflation. Today, the value of 100 Rand, what is 100 Rand today? What is 500 Rand today? We used to go to school, nabasnige 20 cent, this is a primary. Yekuthenga ice 10 cent, bese sowuthenga 30 or something. It's a lot of money. But think of if you can give your children now 20 cent when they go to school. They don't even want 20 Rand. Abasayifuni nje icoin ngevela isebenzi kulabantu abethu nyalo seliphepha bayalati futhi bayalibona ukuthi lihlukile. That is what happens to cash. Yet with property, it outperforms inflation. Whether inflations go up or go down, property just continues. Yes, there will be dips here and there because of what happens in the macros out there. But be rest assured, property is long-term. Therefore, the value of property does skyrocket. For instance, somebody who has bought property in Babane 2000, if you evaluate that property, we will get that information here from experts. They will tell you what your property that you bought, now Y2K, is valued at now, because it does outperform inflation. It is tangible, it is stable. property. So that's what we call property, and that's why we see it as wealth. It's safe. You must view it. Sorry, what have I pressed? So property is stored wealth with that introduction. You need to view it as a savings, as some form of savings, as some form of putting away money, but differently, it grows. It's secured. I've said to you that, for example, property that you bought 20 years ago in Babani is well worth what it was then at this point. So property is also a legacy. I did touch on that when I introduced that. It is transferable to our generations to come. Some of us here are living in properties that our mothers and fathers and grandfathers literally bought. And it has now become an inheritance and generational wealth. And there are a lot of dynamics that are happening around us. What is it becoming? Are you still keeping it as gogo? Is it still good for that? Can it do more for you? Wealth. You need to see it beyond shelter. You need to look at it and see what it can do for you. So cash does lose value, but property value grows. We need to therefore encourage, before I go into this part of we need to encourage, in particular the young people, to appreciate the value of property. I'll take, for instance, CO, our city, beautiful city, Mbabane. It's got a lot of properties that have been abandoned because our parents were doing the right thing, investing in property and wealth, creating this wealth that we're talking about today. But we have a different kind of generation, a generation that doesn't quite appreciate the value of their parents created. Instead, they want maybe a different kind, and maybe it brings a conversation of sectional title. They want to live in flats, you know, and when they move, those ones, you know, they don't want to stay in one place and live at that house that was home. But we need to think around, how do we get them to understand that even if you don't feel like living in that house anymore, which you grew up in, what can you do with it? Which is the conversation that we're having here, so that we can avoid having property that has been abandoned, property that has not been used, because the municipal council will find something to do with it eventually. It doesn't work. It goes against our smart city objective. It will bring crime and just the look and feel. And by the way, I forgot to tell you, CEO, that I always look when I drive into Mbabane, there's one thing I pick up, and I love nature. I love plants and trees. Thank you for doing that for Mbabane. The palm trees and those, oh, it's beautiful. Yesterday it's like I supervised them because ngiyakatsa. Itolo nje nasengiphume eMbabane nsambama bese kuthathwa lamakhoni lamgwaqweni because bese banisele ba maintainile ngathi nakoke. Fanele bese bayinisela. So Mbabane is looking beautiful as you drive in. Those trees, the greening of the city, it looks beautiful. So there's a lot, ladies and gentlemen, that we still need to do, though, particularly with our youth, so that the properties in our city get used. There is value in them. We move on. I don't know how much time I have. I can talk forever, believe you me, but I'm almost there. I can never have this conversation of emphasizing on the importance and the value that property has without touching on finance. Because, as CEO said, the minute you say property, people scratch their heads. It's expensive. I can't afford it. It's true to a certain degree. But property, if you own it and you have it, it is good for collateral. It helps you release capital. It helps you find capital to do other things. It helps you to unlock, it helps us to unlock entrepreneurship. If you want to start a business, I'm a banker. You'll come to me and say, I need capital, I need money. My mind is quickly saying, I wonder if he has collateral. Security. That's the other simple word we use. So if you have property, you already have means by which you can unlock capital to be able to start a business or to grow your business. That is the value of owning property. Bankers love, that is the first primary security that we look at as bankers. Aside money, if you come with security that is in a form of money and property, those are the first primary things that we want. Lolokunye nje stoko nako konke siyakubona because ku immovable and kuyahamba. Stawuthi siyakubala lamhla sikhanze sethe kusasa sokufihlile. Sisi siyayifuna i-truck lebe yi-security so ithengisile wena eSouth Africa ngoba uyayibalekisa so wakha imali. Kanzi indlu sibeka la sikhanza la as our security. So that's the value that you get. Once you own property, know for a fact that you can use it to get funding for education, so that you also develop and you grow yourself. So there's a lot that you can do with property. That is a value, the wealth that property actually carries, again, beyond having it as shelter. I must therefore, or do say that there are challenges in mortgage financing, for instance. Not everyone can access it. So, Honorable Minister, this basically says, as a country, we need to have innovative models to enable eMaswati to be able to access mortgage funding. I know that we also have the other model, which is the Swazi Nation land makes it better because you can get land. But we also want to keep the title deeded mortgage properties alive. So models are different. We can have micro mortgages. We can have rent to own. There's all sorts of models that we can use and think about, obviously depending on our citizens, how their situations are, because the affordability can be a problem, which is normally driven by the income levels of people. They may not be able to afford, but then the models can help us help them. If you can't afford, how can we make you afford property? The size is also critical. Maybe there could be schemes. We do have the housing board that also drives something around that. But the schemes can also help to make housing affordable for eMaswati Ethu. Because like I'm saying, once you own a property, you have value. You can then use it to crack other codes, such as seeking finance with banks and financial institutions. The property that we're talking about is also a catalyst for development. That is why we see it beyond shelter. It is wealth for us. How so? If you have land, which is property, because land is property, and you decide to develop it, you're creating jobs. There is a builder, jobs, who has hired other smaller men to also help. There's a retail store that is selling all those things that you'll be building with. The economy is being driven. There's a plumber, there's an electrician, so there are services that you then bring on board. So just the construction of a mall drives so much economic growth in the city. So it's important that we do that. So you can imagine that nice building that's coming up now that had been up there for the longest of time. Thank you. Oh, the city is going to be beautiful. I want to go work there. You guys must tell me which offices. I want to sit there up there, CEO, and look at Mbaban and think of whatever I'll be doing while I'm looking at the city like I own it. But that's a beautiful building that's coming there. Imagine what was happening though. Look at what it was doing to the city once it was there lying idle. And look at what it will do to the city now. But look at what it is doing now, because it's bringing jobs. There's people now that are constructing. There's hardware stores that are selling. There's plumbers and electricians and people that fit furniture makers that will be selling furniture to whoever that will be occupying that building. That is how it goes. Obviously, I'd never leave out the second one, revenue for municipalities. So property is good for us because we pay rates. Yeah, and paying rates is good. We should. And I think this conversation, Minister, needs to happen so that we can begin to see this thing differently. If you see it as a stress and not see it as development, that will also help you. That when you pay rates, my road will be fixed, infrastructure development, and all these other beautiful trees, even my trees when I drive into Mbaban, will be managed properly because I've paid rates. We need to see it. It's a bigger picture. The municipality needs money to maintain the city and make it a smart city. So pay rates, people. I know that I may be controversial. But it's a logic principle. It's like paying tax. We have to pay tax. We have to pay rates so that the city can be properly maintained. So if we have buildings and properties that are vibrant, that are alive, that are working, rates will come and we will be able to manage the city. And it also attracts domestic and foreign investors. Investors want to see beauty. They want to see security. When they want to come into a country, they will ask you, am I going to be able to buy a home and property to start my business? Is there property where I can do my business, warehouses or whatever they are looking for? So it attracts investors. Is it transferable? Is it secure? Is it safe? Is the data available so that... So all that is what investors want when they want to move into a country. So it is very important, again, for development because it then attracts investors to come into our country. I have an example here of Rwanda. Rwanda has got a digitized system. It did very well. Record keeping is also very important. How we manage and we keep the land information so that it also it helps us to even hasten the processes of transfer and of buying and selling because we have a digitized system where all our records just tell us where things are, who's owning what and who last owned and who's now owning and things like that. So that is also important as we try to use property as a catalyst for development. Personal wealth, national prosperity. Therefore, this is basically intertwined. You own property, property helps you get credit. You get credit, you make jobs, you give jobs. By the way, even a domestic worker, a gardener, it's a job. So even for us that own, we don't have commercial properties, but we have residential properties. The fact that you've bought a property, you now hire a gardener to look after that property, you have created a job. You hire a domestic indoor helper to work for you, you have created a job. So property creates jobs, and it creates jobs if you use it smart like we are talking now, and I'll get to that just now. You will also create higher income. And once you create higher income, there'll be more property demand and it's a cycle. I'll give you an example of a customer who comes into the bank and says, I want to buy property. What do you have as security? I have another property. Well, how are the cash flows? Here are my cash flows. Okay, fine. We give that person that facility and they buy property. The second property, they had the first property. They have two properties. Buys this property, probably goes and makes money using that property. Maybe rental, maybe businesses or whatever he does. Comes back and with that he gets jobs, he hires people in that property and everything, and that property starts generating more money. And comes back to the bank and says, I want another property. And he now acquires another property. And the cash flows of that property start paying off this property, and now he has acquired that property, and it just becomes a cycle. Property as wealth. Because I did say, banks love property. If you come in, it gives them confidence and security. I'm about to end. The key things, though, that we must, as we consider, as we invest in property, as we get alive to the story of property, Digitization, I've touched on it. It's very important. It's where everything is going, by the way. It makes life easy. It will make life easy also for us as the municipal city council. Green living is very important. We're trying to green the city of ours. So we must make sure that as we invest in property, it moves along with solar. We look after our water and sanitation. The waste management of the city is very important. Also, we come with ways and different ways of managing waste. Tourists love eco-smart properties. If we want to bring them into the country, they will ask you, how are the roads? How's the water? What electricity do they? How can I take a walk? They want beautiful gardens. Can I go there and breathe 3 times? That's what they want, spaces. It's green spaces. That's what they look for when they come to countries. So it's important that we bear this in mind as we work towards enhancing the property investment area. So challenges to solve, affordability, I've touched on it. And then the informal part, lack of titles, you know. If you don't have title on property, you won't even look after it. You want to own it. What you own, you look after. I'll give you an example, and sorry, Honorable Minister, to use this one, but we're talking here. I sometimes, when you're driving around or walking in the morning, and I just go walk past government houses, very much dilapidated. And I look at it and I say, if I worked for government, I would wake up, man, in the morning nesihesho. Ngiheshele nje ngiheshele ngihlanyelele timbali. Ngihambe ngiyebuild it ngiyothenga lelifastelo leseliphihlikile siwafaka elicalboards. Ngipenda pende nje kube kuhle. Bese seyithi lengcondo yami. But it's not mine. Why would I invest in it so much? And then it answers the question on why these people don't actually put so much effort in that asset. It's because they don't own it. So ownership is very important, and getting title to an asset of property, because you'll look after it and you'll maintain it. Idle speculation, we've got people, and I think Mr. Malichi can attest to that. There's people that buy and sell property and buy and speculate and buy. It's a good thing, but it's short term. Other than speculating, development is what's key. It's what will make you more money and more wealth than to listen out, what's the price now? Okay, and you're buying. Oh, I'm not buying today. It's a good thing. It will make you the quick buck at that time, but are you really investing in property when you're doing that? Not quite. Yet if you buy and hold property and grow it and develop it, that is when you're creating wealth. So speculation, you can see, but it obviously is informed by what the particular person that's speculating requires. Maybe they want quick buck. Then they can always speculate and buy and sell and buy and sell and buy and sell to keep money. Sustainability, we've touched over that those are must-happens. The DSGs, we know they're there. We have to make sure that as we invest in property, we adhere to that. I'm closing. So the call to us, call of action, is basically to help the affordability story, help our Maswati. Let's get together with the public-private partnerships in the housing space to see how we can work together so that Maswati can have access to property. We digitize land banks. This one is very important. Municipal land banks. It's the idle properties, the abandoned properties. We need to find a way to manage them because they then take away the beauty of our city. But we have touched on the fact that first and foremost, we need to talk about to the owners of those properties to say there is more to it than just a house that you don't know what to do with it. Think of the value that can come out of that house. So there's a conversation that we need to have there. It's about knowledge and being informed, but most importantly also the council can see how it manages such properties before they cause chaos in our beautiful city. Financial literacy, I think it's part of what we're talking about today, to say if people understand the value of property and how to unlock what property carries for them so that they can be able to develop and grow their own wealth for their generation, then it's the way to go. So let's position our Mbaban as a model smart city. I believe we can do it. Sometimes it takes just doing the small things like planting that palm tree, and it just starts showing that light. So ladies and gentlemen, property is an important investment. Let us get it alive. Let's think beyond property being shelter. Let's see what more we can do with property. I hope I've shared a bit and a good takeaway for you. Thank you.
Yeah. I must allow time for people to collect their devices. Yeah. But the devices will come back. I'm sure about that because we have yet another speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please once again, Simshayile Tandla Queen Nozizwe. Quite a mouthful. So as you prepare, we will afford maybe 2 questions at this point. After the next 2 speakers and the minister's speech, we will then have our panelists sit and then engage in terms of the questions that you have. But if there's 2 burning questions right now, I could open up the floor for them. But for me, what stood out, and I remember the recent conversation I had with my nieces, and a similar one we had with a young man with His Worship the Mayor. We had traveled for a meeting outside Eswatini, and we met Liswati, Honorable Minister, that is working in the US, and the young man is a chartered accountant, and he said he's working now for a bank, one of the big banks, the biggest bank in the US of A. Liswati, lala, ngagahoho. So when we met with the young man, these are the interesting conversations, Queen, we were having with him, and it's exactly what you just touched on. That how do we get our young people to have that first discussion with self when they get their first job? Guguti, am I buying a car or am I buying a house? And it's an interesting discussion because we're talking to this young man and very excited. And Mayor Uyambuta yecha. Ngwapela wenda ututa ubuye kai. Utasuhlala phi na ubuye kai. And he goes on, no, I'm actually looking, you know. Kamala makhulu esingisi. Phinza ayibuyise eSwatini. Mayor athi ngithi mina utasuhlala phi ma ubuye kai. Phela wena uphethe $1. $1 is stronger by 20 times if we round it up. Now athumela nje ekhaya ubale nje $500 ngenyanga umbisele ekhaya. Awucabanga ukuthi mawufika, the boy is very young. Awucabanga ukuthi ungafika ekhaya ukhanze itanditi kumele ufike nje ungene estandini sakho ungene endlini yakho. Literally he paused. We were there with him avakashele May. We looked at him. He paused. What? Lethu khuluma yona. Ngingathenga kuphi? So budathi. And he's been following up, Minister. We've connected him with places and just buy a property. And he's 24, 25 years old. Imagine, what will he be, Magana 40, accumulating property. So thank you so much, Queen. I think at this point, let me hasten to the next speaker and allow questions to come. Masisenda I panel session. The next speaker, if you're a property owner, he will fascinate you. Because most of us don't like him, but we like him. Most of us like what he does, but we don't really like it. Because the truth of it is we know and we appreciate that lo mhlaba wethu uyakhula in terms of value. But we know it also translates to the tax I'm going to pay. So discomfort. You want it to grow, but you don't want it to grow. So Mr. Malichi has been doing this for 31 years. He has experience in the private sector, public sector. He has been specializing in property valuation and at state agencies and management of that. Mr. Malichi's work over the years has been to evaluate our property. So his topic today will be one that sort of opens this up for us and says, what does he do when he evaluates? It's a discipline. And we're always telling him, that it really is a discipline. It's not guesswork. So there's a science they utilize. And today we said to him, please come and in your simplest way, without complicating it, Tell us, Mr. Malichi, what do you do when you evaluate our properties? And what are the things, if I am interested, because some of us are interested to get that value up, 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 what are the things I must be doing? If they come and evaluate and I want to object, what are the issues I must look at? But more importantly, I hope like me, you are wondering, yini le ngayenda ngeta le value property yam? Ngoba naku lo kumgcoka ekugcineni, if you are viewing it as a wealth and something you are storing wealth as, most of us want to see mangifaka imali African Alliance. Angibuthi lama investment costs. I haven't heard umuntu dokotela ashayela African Alliance as mali ningicharge emalini kepha kule nyanga kule mali yami le lapho. The first question people ask, it's ikhule kangakanani? Where can I get better interest on this thing? Because sonke siyathi ukuthi it's a wealth. So please position even the thinking around when he presents Babe Malichi. Kokuthi yini le ngayingeda. Thineke sibaka masipala nabo phumzile CEO wasengweni. Siyathi ukuthi ihlahla temakotapeni. Tiyayinyusa ivalue. So siyanhlebela nje indvuna. Ukuthi habani yohlanyela ihlahla temakotapeni maswati. Tiyafaka imali ihlahla temakotapeni. Because nasesi evaluate akhanze ukuthi so ufuna ukuthengisa noma kwenela. Ngakutshela ihlahla semkotapeni siyakubambisa mfana baba. So those are the tips we wanted to pick up as Mr. Malichi is presenting. He holds a Bachelor of Sciences in Land Economy from the Copperbelt University in Zambia, and he also trained as a mine geological survey drafting expert in Zambia once again. He is a member, and for us that's important because emadolobheni thine asibasebenzisi bovalue alabangasiyo ama-member associations no angasiko lo registered na hulumende wakwaNgwane through the Ministry of Geology. Is it the Ministry of Geology? Natural Resources. I could tell that I'm saying something wrong. Ministry of Natural Resources. He is a member of Association of Architects, Engineers, Surveyors, and Allied Professionals. He has led and executed valuations across almost all the municipalities in Eswatini. Currently, he is the Managing Director of Swaziland Realty Consultants. Mr. Malichi, it truly is a wealth of knowledge in this space, in this area. So please welcome him as he takes the podium to speak on his topic this morning.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, as the former speaker said, may I also stand on the observed protocol as I present. Mine is to present on the valuation aspect of real estate. As you can rightly see up there, real estate value as property. Of course, the former speaker has cleared everything about property to us. Maybe starting, I may preempt some questions that people may ask even later. Property, real estate is called a stable investment or commodity in the market, as it has hedges against inflation. But some people would definitely ask, you mean that property cannot lose value or anything? Yes, there are a few cases that will affect the value of property in a short term, but not in the long term. For instance, a dilapidated house on a piece of land will cause the value of that property to go down, okay? There's also what we call functional obsolescence. After many years, some buildings can no longer perform according to the plans that were made maybe 100 years ago. So mainly what reduces the value of property in that regard is what is put on the land. Otherwise, as it has been said, property is the best investment. It does not lose value. if, like she said, if you bought property many years ago at 100,000, for instance, it should be maybe 500,000 today. And so, in that regard, it doesn't. Money, very important, but loses value. I was surprised when, during the pandemic, most of the prices came down. A barrel of oil was going for 3 imalangeni. I was shocked. But property, even though it was affected, did not go that low. If you bought it at 100,000 5 years ago and it was affected by the pandemic, it would not go below the amount you spent at the beginning. Yes, let me go into the issue of valuation. Let me just read some of the notes that, which button do I even, I do this, okay. That's the one. Yeah, we are living in an age of the Google space and AI and things like that. I know many people are well-versed, but some of us are old school. Okay, the topic real estate as property focuses on the crucial concept of determining and understanding the monetary worth of real estate. This value is not a single fixed number, but a dynamic figure influenced by a wide range of factors. It is a key element in every real estate transaction and selling to lending. Real estate is a piece of land, including any artificial or natural property permanently attached to it, above or beneath, such as a house, building, tree, and minerals. For the purposes of this discussion, we'll confine ourselves to real estate in towns, featuring residential and commercial / industrial pieces of land. Of course, when we are dealing with valuation, we assess a lot of things. Apart from landed property, we assess movable assets. Even a spoon can be assessed and things like that. That's just for your knowledge, because many people come to me and say, do you also assess cows or things like that? We do that. So that's why we're confining ourselves to landed property. Real estate, as the term itself suggests, refers to a more stable and tangible commodity with regard to the precarious nature of the trade and economic environment. The capacity for capital appreciation or gains makes real estate stand out as a stable and more reliable investment in comparison to other commodities. Real estate value and its assessment. So this is the place where I need to zero in much. The real estate value then is the monetary worth of the bundle of rights held in relation to fixed property, to landed property, fixed landed property component. The market value is the most probable price at which a property may exchange or may change hands in an open and competitive market. This is assessed by a thorough consideration and analysis of the market conditions and factors that influence it. Okay, so that is the situation about value. Before we do any evaluations, there is a need to do an assessment of the market. So you may know that there are many markets within the property market. There are major markets, then there are sub-markets. And then these also are divided into residential market, industrial market, and commercial markets. And also then you go down to the place where now you're dealing with the locations. So you have, like in Mbabane, places like Tembelihle, you have Dowridge, you have Msunduza, you have maybe the high density areas and the low density areas and the sparsy ones. So you have to consider all those places before you arrive at an appropriate value. You cannot just go to look at sales in Dow Ridge, get a rate, and apply it in Tembelisa, for instance, or in Msunduza. It won't work. So that's why I say you have to look, the valuer looks at all the conditions before they come up with appropriate rates to apply. So there are factors that influence the real estate market, which are part of the things that a valuer has to consider. Key factors considered in the assessment of value. The value of property is a complex calculation influenced by location. This is often the most significant factor encompassing proximity to amenities, schools, transport, and a neighborhood's economic health and safety. Location may also associate a parcel of real estate to smells, noise, and views from nearby area, or perhaps there may come to the mind of a valuer the relationship between the property and lake or mountains from the living room. So this, as I'm going to describe what valuation is, maybe let me just go to where I can find valuation. It's gone back. All right, valuation is, I may have left it out. Valuation is an art or a science of trying to assess the values of properties. So it's an art as well as a science. An art in the sense that when you have looked at all the conditions, you need to use your discretion. So that's why you have to look at these conditions properly. Then there are formulas that we use to assess these properties. So they have to do with numbers, long calculations. So it's an art as well as a science. So when I'm looking at the methods of valuation, I'll be able to mention that. So we talked about location. It's very important about location because the value, like I've said, of a property in Dow Ridge and in Msunduza may not be the same for many reasons. I mean, and obvious reason as well. The type of houses that are built in Dow Ridge, the spaces, and just the environment is different from that one of Msunduza. And so when you are dealing with the selection of the rates to use per square meter, that must be considered. And there are many other things that you can see there. So there are places, of course, that are not favorable for people to live. You can go and build a big house there, but it may not give you a good value because of the environment. If it's noisy, if it has smells, and all these kind of things. So people will not want, even if the house is very beautiful, so the value will be affected. So that is location. And location also determines, I'll give an example. You buy a plot in Woodlands, for instance, for 500,000. That is 1,000 square meters. And if you go to Hawane, someone will be selling a hectare for 500,000. So you see what location is. It's very important. And for people, you know, many of us, by the way, I'm a ratepayer as well. For many of us, yeah, I paid the rates as well. I think I'm not owing the city council. Yes, so many people don't want to build their houses in the city because of perhaps rates. Mainly rates. And if you look at rates, it's what kind of percentage is it? to the worth of your property. It's a very small thing. But like the previous speaker said, the benefits are many. So that example I've given you about Hawane and Woodlands should open your eyes to see that in town, you buy a piece of land, 1,000 square meters, which is 10 times smaller than the Hawane hectare, but it's giving you a 500,000. So if you are paying rates, let's say 5,000 or something like that, what is that compared to the value of your property? The next factor is physical attributes, functional efficiency, adaptation of the property for the functions for which it is to be used, the size, condition, age, layouts, features of the property, and so on. Okay, on this point, I say that a property can lose value in the long run if someone doesn't take care of it. So you see with that, if you maintain the property basically, we talk about a lifespan of 60 to 100 years. That is a useful lifespan for a property, for a building. And if you keep it well, it may even go beyond that. And when we're talking about functional obsolescence, then for you to enhance the value of your property, you need to do something to your property, maybe modernize it, modernize the roof, do certain things, extensions and things like that. Just beautify it. It may go beyond the 100 years. We know that buildings can even go to 200, 300 years. So it's the way you maintain it. But for the purposes of use, we consider 60 to 100 years. So even when we're dealing with depreciation, those are the number of years that we use. Market conditions, supply and demand dynamics in the local real estate market, as well as broader economic factors like interest rates, employment rates, can cause values to appreciate or depreciate. That's an obvious thing. When there is an oversupply of property, definitely you anticipate a small in property. Okay, in property, because I know from experience that there is no way, and it has never happened, that there can be an oversupply of landed property in any particular place. It doesn't happen. So it can happen if, say, someone decided to get a piece of land, maybe in Hawane, for instance, and was allowed to develop another township, a big township and things like that, and everyone begins to go there. So that would definitely affect the values in the city or in the nearby places, because then people will begin going there, and then the demand in the city goes down. So that is how some of the values can be affected. All right, so comparable sales, a key method of determining a property in value is by looking at the recent prices, similar properties in the area. So that is a method of valuation, though it was one of the factors. So methods of valuations. Professionals use different approaches to appraise real estate value. Sales stroke capital comparison method. The method compares property to recently sold similar properties in the neighborhood, making adjustment for differences. So let me just speak on this one, because I believe this is where people want to know. How do you do it? We just see a person coming, he measures my house, takes some pictures, and next time he puts a value there. So what does he really do? How does he come up with those figures? So the capital comparison method is, as it says, you have to get a reservoir of properties that have been sold in a city or in a particular area. And then we do what we call grid analysis. So you get, let's say, 10 properties in Tembelihle, and you line them up. Okay, of course, we have a problem of information. So I have an advantage because I've done most of the valuations of these towns. I've done Babane, I've done Manzina, I've done, so I've got this wealth of information in my laptop. So for me to analyze the information is easy because I just get, okay, this is a 5-bedroom house. It was sold for 1 million. This is a 2-bedroom house. I look at the description. Okay, it has concrete tiles. It has aluminum windows and all those components of a building. And also I look at this one, oh, it have a tiles. This one has IBR, this one has corrugated. But they have all this pricing as well. So we are looking at prices, not market value. I must emphasize because sometimes we confuse between the price and the market value. So the prices are the amounts that people pay for the properties in the market when they agree. But I cannot get a price of one particular property and place it or use it as a comparable to another property without analyzing the market. It won't be accurate. So that's why we do this grid analysis. So when you do this, it gives you a picture of the market. Sometimes you may call it a mean, but it's not a mean, but it gives you a picture because this one was sold for 5,000 per square meter, this one for 4,000 per square meter, that one for 5,000 per square meter, and things like that. Then you begin discounting them because of the construction details. So that's where the art comes in, the art of discretion. So you need to apply yourself to see, okay, if this, which is upper in quality, was sold like this, and this is lower, and this, but they are in the same location. At the end, when you analyze them, you should come up with a rate per square meter for the subject property you are assessing. So that is the first method of valuation, which is the capital comparison. Then the income approach. The income approach is, of course, we look at income flow in a particular property. And that gives us a picture of the worth of that property. But we do not just apply the rates independently. We also consider the market in that case. Because in Babane, for instance, the office space may give you rates ranging from 120 emalangeni to 180 emalangeni per square meter, for instance. So you have a range. So your particular property may have 140 emalangeni per square meter. So you cannot just adopt that and use it. So you synchronize it with the rentals in the market according to also the status of the buildings and the offices you are dealing with. So in this case, the approach is such that you get the gross income, and then you subtract the outgoings, which is also a subject. Okay, so there are certain outgoings that are obvious. They are obvious because someone paid electricity, paid security, he paid water, he paid all insurance. They are obvious. But then there are other things like vacancies or voids, which you have to estimate. I may, for instance, go to a certain property portfolio where they have maybe 100 properties, and out of the 100, maybe 2 of them are not doing well. They have spaces that are not let out, maybe for various reasons. And it may give me a 2% maybe vacancy rate. I may not have to take that and just use it straight, but I have to look at the city. What is the vacancy rate in that particular market, in that particular location? And also, yes, and then after looking at that, then I'll be able to adopt a certain vacancy rate. I know that there are valuers in here, So we have different views. Some people move around with their own vacancy rate and so on. But it is something you analyze from the market. It's not something you dream. Then we use what the cap rate, what they call the cap rate, the capitalization rate. After we have done all this mathematics, we have removed the outgoings. Then we apply the cap rate. Now, the cap rate is of course, in simple terms, the factor that you get by dividing the. When I was doing school, we didn't separate it, but some young valuers have had to correct it sometimes. We would just get the gross annual income over the sale price. But others say, no, you have to use the net and things like that. After you've removed VAT and all that kind of thing. So whatever it is, you still come up with a factor. Either it's 8%, or 9% or something like that. So that then is what we used to call the YP, yes purchase. Yes purchase. The yes purchase, if it is 8.5%, it will give you a multiplier or a yield of 12.5. That's what you multiply with the amount you get after subtracting from the gross. I don't know if it's clear, that one. But it's some mathematics. Can I go over it again? Maybe you ask questions after this, yes, because my time is gone. Yes, then we have the cost approach. The cost approach is, of course, we call it cost approach or contractor's test. So the contractor's test is the amount of money you use to build the property. So that is the cost. So the cost is not normally the price at which you can sell the property. If you build for 100,000 and you are a business person, definitely you won't sell it for 100,000. You need to sell it at a certain amount. And this method is used as a check, as well as at times when there is no comparables in the area. And in most cases, it is used for government buildings and schools, because there are no comparables for schools. You can't say this school was sold for so much and so on. So it's the element of using the actual cost plus interest. Some may add 15%, 20%, then it gives you the value of that property. All right, so it's a straightforward thing. And then the residual method of valuation, most cases is used for when there are no comparables of land. So the type of development that is built for a certain site should give you a picture of the value of that property. So if it is in town, you get space and you want to put up a big mall, even if there are no comparables, or there are comparables which are not appropriate, you can use the building to the value or the cost of the building and the value thereafter to come down to the value of the land, to give you the value of the land. So there's a process also that we go through doing that. The profits method is similar to the cost, to the income approach, except that in this case we use it mostly for hotels, because in the hotels there are room rates, the sales from the bars and all this kind of stuff. So you do your calculations until you come to a place where to the divisible balance or something like that you can capitalize. So these are the methods. I don't know if there's still some more that I need to show here. What is this? Okay, this is, I was just saying, two pieces of similar properties in different locations of real estate. In different locations are real estate. However, their values may not be the same unless it is professionally assessed. So the importance of valuation. Yeah, the importance of valuation is that if you put up a building it is brick, mortar, and roof standing on a demarcated piece of land. You may use the cost method, but like I've said, cost is not value, though cost creates value. I don't know if you understand me. So you cannot build and sell it at the same amount. You need something higher than the amount that you spend. So that's why valuation is very important, because you cannot just walk into, unlike other commodities in the city, in the shops, and all these factory places where you have price tags. In valuation, in property, the property market, you can't just go to a house and you have a tag there saying this house is 1 million, that house is, it has to be assessed for you to know whether you are buying or selling. So that is the importance of valuation. The disciplines of architecture, quantity surveying, and engineering are involved in the development of real estate at various stages. In most cases, they deal with the cost of development and not the value. The cost of development may not necessarily be the real estate value or market value. For instance, you may spend $1 million to put up a building in a wrong location, or perhaps on Swazi Nation land. Not that deep, yeah. And may not realize the above value, yeah. That is obvious. So 2 houses, I can build the same one in Boban and build another one on Swazi Nation land. The value will not be the same for obvious reasons we have discussed. And in short, real estate value as property is the study of how and why real estate has monetary worth and the various methodologies used to accurately assess the worth in a dynamic market. Well, that is in a nutshell what valuation is and the importance of value and why valuation is important. I think I'll end here.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Mr. Malichi. Quite a mouthful. And yeah, highly informative. Mr. Malichi. Do we have two hands I can take right now, burning ones? Yes, I see one, I see two. Okay, I opened a can of worms. So we'll start Kubaba Masego. We'll go to the back. There's 2 gentlemen and then director in front. Can I just take all the 4 questions quickly? Please just be straight to the question so that Mr. Malichi takes it.
Oh, act of God, angaiboni. Sometimes you get itonga. Kumanotsak, you don't have act of God. You know, I think it's important to say, if when there is something go property amount like kuba netonga, kuba ne provision somewhere, go say you will take that into consideration. Logunye, when doing the evaluation, you use properties, you look at properties that have been sold in that area, comparable sales. I think you quite correctly said you use the art and science. So there is subjectivity level. How do we get to know Gogo to be objective ngempela? Because if you also use your discretional powers, who then checks on your decision? Because now it's no longer scientific only. You're also using your own observation. You have to observe, of course. Yes. It becomes objective. How objective are you? Kulogo? Those are the 2 questions I have. In fact, I've got one more question, but you didn't touch on it. You have.
Can I ask you to be very brief, Masego?
Okay.
There's 4 other hands.
Okay. I will not be here, but I do want you to address
Okay.
a general rate. You didn't touch on that, and differential rates. And I've asked some people go with my notes. When
Then the
saying
next
that.
speaker will cover that topic.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
So thank you very much, Damane. 2 questions that he's put. Please kindly introduce yourself, just the name so that we accordingly when we respond. There's the gentleman right in front of you. The other hand was at the corner.
Sinfusele bakunene. Libito lami ngumfana sibili ngakamazibuko.
Ngesimazibuko ngicela uphakame mazibuko batakubona.
Libito lami ngumfana sibili ngakamazibuko. Kima kuse umbuto nje kuvunulisa Mr Malichi. I presentation yakhe ibe inhle kakhulu. Kepha nje ngicabanga ukuthi kukhona lapho maka presenter afake indzaba yokuthi uyabekisa nje ukuthi eDar Rich nakamsunduza evaluation ngeke seyifanane usebenzisa igama lokuthi mhlambe kamsunduza ungakhanza ukuthi akusimele ngicabanga ukuthi asimvunuluse nje lapho Nkosi yami uMalichi ukuthi amana asebenzisele linye asebenzisele linye indlela because mhlambe sekungete kwabuke kahle ikakhulu ngoba kamsunduza
Cha ke asekuvele sekujube babe akasho njalo. I think yonke lendlu yakuphikisa mhlambe umuve kabi. Cha ikabekeke njalo. Can I give you 2 more minutes? I really want questions, Dihlobo Dami. Questions.
All right.
But please proceed, Baba.
Okay. Nekuthi ke asengibude nje ukuthi indzaba yekuvaluisha masi buka ukuthi mhlambe siva ngazi ukuthi takhamuti master valuation mhlambe seyindlela yokuthi kumbe kukhule ama rates ngabe ihamba njani lapho.
Thank you, Baba Mazibuko. Can I have, there was a hand there at, yes. Yes, just one hand and then one last hand here. We'll open another session for questions.
Sanbonani, Sangwangumalo. I'm in the property industry as well. I help sellers get buyers and buyers get property. Manje ukhanza ukuthi through valuations, but sellers are happy with valuations of their properties, but buyers are complaining that valuators are making properties expensive. How would you defend that as a valuator? Thank you.
Nice and straight to the point. Thank you so much, kind sir. Please take the hand, Lesia, because and then we can take the final hand, Langembili.
Oh, Nguvusele. My name is Wazenqimalo. I'm a former student at the University of Eswatini. Mine is 2 questions. Firstly, to the Mr. Malichi and as well as the Honorable Queen. Firstly, was Mr. Malichi mentioned there's absence of some information in terms of when we are evaluating. As somebody was doing information science and key on knowledge and information, how can we access that information, especially if it's not there, but you want to evaluate and having to sell that property? And then to the Honorable Queen, as young people who are building our knowledge capacity, as I think some of us can tell what information is another property and knowledge is another property. As business people or people in the corporate sector can tell what information is quite critical, especially when you lose employers. How can we as young people participate in such a thing in terms of property? Because it's not only Bamfula Batsala who are buying property, but as young people who are also looking into such a thing because we want to participate in such a thing because there's a high rate of unemployment, but there are other things we can participate in, such as the property. How can we include ourselves in such a thing? Thank you.
One more question?
Yes, just one more.
Yeah.
Thank you, Program Director, Honorable Minister, and all presenters. There was a concern when we were doing the public consultations on the review of the Rating Act, Mr. Malichi, that the Rating Act allows you, valuers, to use the market value as a basis for valuations. They were proposing that may we consider another valuation method for the different categories instead of just using the market value across the board for valuations? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let me start with that last one. Definitely there are places in the world where the market value is not used as the basis for rates. But in my thinking, it doesn't make any difference. You see, if the tariff remained the same for many years, it will make a difference. Because I think this one, he would talk about it. Let me just leave Mr. Magagula will talk about it as well. So that is my thinking. So if it is for the purpose of making the ratepayers feel good, that they are not paying so much on the market value, it is a good thing. But I believe it will translate to the same thing. Okay, let me start with Babe Maseko's. When I began, I said those were preemptive remarks about the questions that would come when I say that even though it is said that property has a hedge against inflation and does not go down, but I mentioned a few things that would make property go down, which is the dilapidations, it's the functional obsolescence. So I forgot because I had it in mind because the act of God, you're talking about a situation where maybe your building is in a place where there's severe erosion or anything, floods and all these things. Definitely they will render the property value low. And if you are doing valuation, you need to assess that. You need to look at it. You need to take care of it. It's by the same act you are saying, the act of discretion. So yeah, you have to look at it and say, okay, what percentage can I allocate to this if this property has been affected, maybe by the act of God, let's say floods, storms, and all this kind of thing. So it doesn't maintain the same value once that has happened. And then the issue of who checks me, because you say I'm talking about valuation as an art, as a science. Who checks me? Well, I'm sure, like I normally say there should be medical doctors here. When you go to the hospital and they prescribe something, we don't even question them that whose opinion is that? We just take those tablets and put them in. So, but the doctor, he is using science, I know, but he's listening to you. You're saying, chest, it's painful here, but he's not sure whether the pain is. So that's the matters of discretion anyway are debatable, but the issue is that if you have experience, you try by all means to be close. If you are not influenced by any other factors, because human beings can be influenced. But if you're not influenced by any other negative factors, your opinion should be very close to the, yes. Oh, buy and seller question. Yes. I heard my friend there saying we put the values high so that the sellers cannot buy them. Of course, we don't do that. It's actually the right term is assessment, not determination. So we don't determine the property prices and market values, but we assess, which means we observe and analyze and then use the scientific methods and opinions to come up with. So you must understand that in the market, as a seller, you know that there are floor prices and also there are ceiling prices. You know that. So when you are selling, someone will start with a ceiling price and you negotiate and come down. At a floor price, you say, I can't go below this. So there is that region there. So if I'm doing valuation and my valuation is close to the maybe ceiling price, to you it will be very expensive because normally the buyer wants to pay the lowest amount. So it will render my valuation or cause my valuation to look like it's too high. So evaluation is a guide, and it shouldn't be, the figure should not be, the error should not be very big. But we don't determine the prices, we don't put them high. we interpret the market. Okay, so the other one was, who is the, the gentleman who was saying, okay, at least you are corrected because I did not say Msunduza stinks, but I just said in their areas. I've been to cities. I've been to cities where that happens, where there are compounds where maybe sewers are nearby. So it's definitely smells. So you know that the values will not be there. Then the other question, if you may remind, the expression. Eh? Yeah, Bonya, yes, Bonya. So what other thing did this? What is the last question you said? I wrote expensive.
No, you've answered.
I've answered here.
Yes.
Then who else was this?
No, good.
Yeah, that gentleman. I've answered him. Oh, thank you very much.
All right. Maybe Queen, before you do come in and respond, I think team, let's delegates, let's appreciate that we will have the panel session. So please continue to mill around the questions, because on the question of discretion, my 2 cents of it, and the checks and balances. I believe when you go through the Rating Act, one of the beautiful things about it is that it creates in itself checks and balances, and that's the function of the valuation court. So if you've been to a valuation court, it's that opportunity where what the valuer is saying is tested. So if you've sat in a valuation court, it's a very interesting court because it is set in terms of the laws of the land, and the valuer is called upon to explain why he used what he used. In certain instances, property owners even bring other valuers. It even gets more interesting when you listen to them debate the dynamics of it. So in the discipline itself, I do not believe that there are no checks and balances, but especially as it relates to the rating of your property for the purposes of paying rates. The valuation court is primarily for that role, and we have watched it unfold, and the debates are happening, and you see that this is truly not discretionary. The science comes into play quite evidently. And I think the director is touching on a point that is very critical, Honorable Minister, that during the consultations that we are going through, one of the things that we've equally noted is the need for us to educate and educate and educate. Because one of the questions, and if I go to what the director is saying, so if the market value is what I use, and I evaluate your Bentley, Honorable Minister, Jesus, get a Bentley. And I evaluate the minister's Bentley, and it is 4 million. And I evaluate my mayor's Honda Fit, and it is 50,000. What the valuer is saying is that it doesn't matter if it's for rates, what you used. If it's a market value, it gives you the values. What then matters is the tariff. And that's what he's going to speak to, because 1% of a Bentley and 1% of a Honda Fit, it brings it back to what you should be paying when you think about it. So that is what the valuer is saying, that maybe that question, let's take it deeper after we listen on the topic of then how does the municipality take the Bentley and the Honda Fit and put a tariff? Because that's the rate that then affects what you pay. So the valuation, if it's market, it's okay. The problem becomes if the municipality will say 10%, and 10% of a Bentley is something else, and 10% of a Honda is something else. So let's hold it there. I'm just provoking your thinking around this so that when we get the next presentation, we have a better view of the full chain of what we then discuss, we talk about as the rating. Lungulu, the question to you from the young person, I like young people in the room, they always want to find their space. You never hear old people say, how are we as old people featuring? But young people, they'll remind you, as young people, how are we featuring? Yeah. And at that time, Minister says, they're growing fast. Mlungulu, please.
Thank you very much for that question. And yes, I like young people. They also ask very challenging questions. These people are too intelligent. But it's a good question that you're raising, and for your own benefit and for all the young people in the house. The first thing, as a young people and the young people of Eswatini, let's get into the culture of looking for knowledge and going to the bank, just to visit the bank, not because you'll come for money there, you'll get money there, or ask for money. Just to say, tell me, how do I get property? Or buy, how can you help me finance property? What do I need to have? Go to Mr. Malichi's office. Mr. Malichi, if I would have wanted to buy property, and I'm young, and maybe I don't quite generate enough revenue at this point, which area of Mbaban or wherever do you think I should buy property that is affordable for me, as young as I am, with this little income that I'm generating? You go to the council. Which areas have properties that have been abandoned and maybe they are being sold or they are available? Research is very, very important. That is the starting, because you have this vision, because you must have a vision also. Visions are very, very important, because you'll buy property and then it gets abandoned and you don't do anything with it. So research, knowledge, looking for knowledge, people, Maswati. Asifune knowledge, asikufune kufunza nelwati, kude tintfo sitokhona kutenda kahle. That is the first point. But getting back to you as a young person, the first and biggest hurdle is normally that money that you just start off with, that capital that you start off with. So let's take a typical example. You are a young person, you finished university and you're still not employed, but you start something. You maybe have a kaya kunensimu lenkulu where you think, let me start ngilime emakhabish. And you go to sengiyabekisa Numbboard. How do you help me Numbboard? Sengitshengisa lo lokunye kwasebhange kwa-agriculture nyalo. Ma-funds ahulumende la free. Ete hulumende akunikete Numbboard Swatini Bank ifund yekulima lime ngoba imahala. Ekhaya kunensimu yaSwazi Nation Land. Uqale wakhe imali, uyibeke le mali. Uphokophele kubuye embabane. Kuto uthenga ini iproperty. Na seyikhona le mali seyimakhile sengiyabekisa 50,000. So uyile kubabe mileage, so uyile mbabane bathi yathi khona ngala indlu ya 500,000. Bang, kunendlu ya 500,000. Lencane phela nawe na uqala ungabokuqala leti thaba letinkulu vele lo ungeke ufike kuyo nyalo, ungafika kona. Ube realistic. Thathe 50,000 lakho warand wakho bang sengina 50,000 mina. Ngine property lapha ngisitensini. Source of income ngithengise emakhabishi la. Ngidawuqala ngibhadale ngemakhabishi kodwa le ndlu ngifuna kuyenda iAirbnb. Itawukhipha imali nayo ikubhadale. Sesiyabekisa uyabona. Ngoba vele liqiniswa ngeke nginiyeke mina le mabhange sitayifuna le cash flow lokuthi okay utasibhadala njani phela ngathi sibusiness sifuna kubhadala. So you need to then be thinking like that as a young person. So uyayithola ke le ndlu yakho so uyenda le rental noma uyayirentisa noma so wenda bo Airbnb seyiqala kwakhe imali nawe nelikhabishi lakho liyayakha imali. So uyabuya futhi uthi bhange mina senginibhadabhadele la sengifuna nayiya yesibili. That's how it goes. I hope I answer your question. The starting point is to crack that first source of income that will just give you at least a deposit. And once it gives you a deposit and you make sure that you, for the start, you have just a stable income that will repay and give you that, then you just keep growing into property. You keep growing into property. Ungatithenga nje tindlwana letincane in the areas where you can afford. And eventually you start buying something bigger and bigger and bigger. That is how you... And then young people, because you've got... Ninesifo sekufuna kusheshe. Kwendeke nyalo. These things require patience. Batanjela vodokotela la. Tinvo tia uyabeketela nje emhlabeni. Tinvo step by step. Titawendeka. You cannot get quite rich overnight. Be patient, but start. Start just the way that we've highlighted. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Queen. It applies to young people and even us old people. because even at this age, you can still buy a property. So nithathe nje le advice as she is giving it. Be friends with your bank. It helps. Nanike phavele siyanisaba Ndlunkulu. Sinjwayele nje ukuthi ungena ma unemali. So hearing you say, come and talk to us. Usicocele nje amaphupho akho, it's really reassuring. Honorable Minister, delegates, I think at this point we can give you a short let's stretch and a coffee break. Coffee is served. Please use the exit that you came in through, and you'll find a coffee station. It's we're going to try and shorten the coffee break. As you can see, my program, we're running behind quite a bit. But I'm not worried because it was for good reasons that we are running behind. So we shall ask that we do a short tea break. Let's give it 20 minutes. Can I ask that we all be seated at 11:20? Thank you.